They said I was lucky to be alive. Funny, I didn't feel lucky waking up in a hospital bed to find my wife gone, my savings drained, and a note saying she needed to find her own happiness. No warning. No goodbye. Just 75 grand missing and a 20-year marriage shattered overnight. You don't expect to die on a Tuesday. In fact, you don't expect to die at all, at least not anytime soon. But that Tuesday, as I stood there on the job site, supervising the crew while the concrete trucks unloaded, it all hit me. 1 second, I was watching the guys work, making sure everything was lined up for the pour. The next, everything went black. It's funny how life works. I was 50 years old, healthy enough for a man who'd spent his entire adult life swinging hammers, hauling tools, and bossing around a few dozen guys on the biggest job sites in Denver. The back was sore, sure, my knees cracked like gravel sometimes, but in my mind, I was invincible. I'd survived things other men would have folded under: long hours, rough winters, dangerous heights. I'd seen accidents happen on the job, and I'd always walked away unscathed. So, when that chest pain hit, I brushed it off as just another part of the job. But it wasn't. I remember feeling dizzy for a second, then the sharp pain in my chest, and before I knew it, I was on the ground. I didn't even have time to scream, didn't have time to do anything but try and take a breath. I must have passed out right there, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed around me. Everything hurt. My chest, my throat, my head. The pain was like nothing I'd ever felt before, as if someone had reached inside my chest and twisted my heart like a wrench. I didn't know it at the time, but I'd just suffered a massive heart attack. It was bad, really bad. The doctors said they had to put me in a medically induced coma to keep my body from shutting down completely. They were careful about it, talked in hushed voices like I couldn't hear, but I could tell from the looks on their faces that they didn't expect me to make it. 2 weeks. That's how long I was out. 2 weeks where I wasn't there to fight, to see what was happening, to make sure everything would stay the same. But I didn't know any of that yet. I just lay there, my mind floating in the dark, unaware of how much things were about to change. When I came to, everything hurt. My chest felt like someone had hit me with a sledgehammer, my throat was dry, raw, and my head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. But the real pain didn't come from the physical stuff. It was the weight in my stomach, the heaviness that made my heart race even though it had only just started to beat properly again. It was the moment when the nurse handed me my phone. She was polite, careful, not wanting to disturb me. But she had to get me oriented, she said. She slid the phone into my hand and asked if I wanted it turned on. I nodded, still groggy, still in a daze. I saw the screen light up, blinking with notifications. One after the other, the messages and alerts rolled in. Then I saw it. A note from Lisa. Lisa. My wife of 20 years. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I need to find my own happiness. That was it. No explanation. No, I love you, or, I'm sorry. Just that cold, simple statement. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it, my brain struggling to piece together the meaning. Happiness? What the hell was she talking about? I scrolled down and saw the next thing that twisted the knife, the bank balance. The joint account, the one we'd used for everything, house payments, bills, savings for retirement, it was gone. Completely drained. $75,000. Gone. Vanished, just like that. I thought I was seeing things at first, but I wasn't. It was real. I could feel my chest tightening again, but this time, it wasn't just the heart attack. It was everything crashing down around me. I didn't know what to feel. Confused. Hurt. Furious. But more than anything, I felt empty. I didn't go home. Didn't call her. I couldn't. I didn't even know what to say. What could I say to someone who'd done this to me, to our family? I grabbed the phone again, my fingers shaking as I dialed Mike's number. Mike had been my best friend since high school. He'd been there when I got married, when our kids were born, when we bought our first house. I didn't even have to explain. Mike picked up on the first ring. Mike. I need a place to stay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. And that was it. The start of a long road I never saw coming. He was there for me in more ways than just being physically present. Mike supported me in every way. He picked me up from the hospital, helped me into his car like a doll, and drove me to his home. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't lecture me. He simply opened the door to his home and let me in. The first few days were quiet. He gave me a place to stay in the guest room, dimmed the lights, made sure I ate, and gave me a chance to recover, both physically and, I think, emotionally. The hardest part wasn't the pain in my chest or the weakness in my arms. It was the emptiness in my head, the feeling that everything was broken into pieces, like a puzzle scattered across the floor, and I didn't know how to put it back together. I lay there looking at the fan and thinking about Lisa. About our 20 years together. And about all the moments that had suddenly lost their meaning. Images of her, of us, of the life I thought we had built together flashed before my eyes. The late-night girls' nights out, how often did she go to those? Always with her friends, but she never told me where she was or who she was with. She always came back tanned, with new clothes and an energy I couldn't understand. She told me how great she had time, but never mentioned any details. Looking back, I realized that these weren't just a few trips. The thing is, she had to leave, as if she was running away from something. Or someone. And then there were moments when I tried to talk about money. I would bring up savings or retirement plans, and she would flinch. At first, it was subtle, just a clenching of her jaw or a change in her gaze, but over time it became more obvious. When I mentioned our savings, she avoided my gaze. When I asked if we should start putting more into our account, she changed the subject or said we couldn't afford it. Lies. These weren't just cracks anymore. The cracks had deepened. They were proof. Proof of what I didn't want to see. What I refused to see. But lying in Mike's guest room, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Lisa wasn't the woman I thought she was. I couldn't just sit there. Mike was great, but he couldn't fix this for me. I had to know what was really going on. So, while I rested and recovered, I started digging. My name was still on most of the financial accounts, and she hadn't covered her tracks very well. The more I looked, the more I found. It wasn't even subtle. It started small at first, a few transfers here and there, moving a couple $100. Maybe I would have brushed it off as nothing, but once I started digging deeper, I found more. Way more. Over the last 12 months, she'd been quietly funneling money out of our joint account into one under her name. It wasn't just a few bucks either. We're talking nearly $40,000, just gone. I could see the dates, the amounts, and the frequency of the transfers. She'd been doing this for almost a year. That wasn't the worst of it. As I started going through the statements, I found out how she'd been spending the rest. Hotels. Expensive restaurants. Jewelry. Flowers. All the things she never seemed to have the money for when we talked about saving for the future, but somehow, she'd found it for herself. And it wasn't even for us, it was all for her. For whoever she was spending that money on. But the financial stuff was just the tip of the iceberg. Then came the emails. I'd never been one to snoop through her stuff. I trusted her, at least, I thought I did. But now? Now, it felt like the only thing I could trust was what I could see for myself. So, I started looking through her inbox. I knew I had no right to do it, but I couldn't help myself. And that's when I saw it. One sender popped up more than others, always right there at the top of her inbox. Eric. Eric freaking Keller. The name hit me like a slap. Eric Keller was a guy we used to have over for barbecues. He was our friend. My mind raced as I thought back to all the times Lisa had mentioned him. A coworker, she'd said. Just a friend. Nothing to worry about. But as I scrolled through the emails, the lies started falling apart. It wasn't just friendly banter. They'd been talking more than I'd ever imagined. And then I found the photos. One of them was from a trip to Aruba. The timestamp? 3 days after my heart attack. I was stuck in an ICU, unable to breathe on my own, and there she was, my wife, on a beach, in a bikini, smiling with Eric like nothing was wrong. The anger surged through me, hot and heavy. She didn't just take my money. She'd taken something else too. Something that hurt worse than any dollar figure. Mike could tell I wasn't just going to let this go. After all the digging I'd done, I was as angry as I'd ever been in my life, but I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I needed to be smart about this. That's when Mike introduced me to Sarah. Sarah was a divorce attorney who didn't just talk tough, she was tough. I'd heard good things about her from a few people, and when Mike called her on my behalf, she didn't hesitate. She told me to come by her office, so I did. I walked in, sat down across from her, and handed her everything I had, the bank statements, the transfers, the emails, the pictures of Lisa and Eric in Aruba. I laid it all out, like I was presenting a crime scene. Sarah didn't blink when she saw the financial records. Her eyebrows raised so high, I thought they'd leave her forehead. "You've got more than enough here," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "You've got proof of everything, Jack. She's been living a double life, and now it's time to burn this down, legally." She wasn't wrong. I could see it now, looking at everything all laid out in front of me. Lisa had been stealing from me, lying to me, and worse, betraying me with someone I'd trusted. The idea of her running off with Eric, draining our savings, and laughing at me while I lay in a hospital bed? It made my blood boil. But Sarah's confidence put a little weight in my chest. It was time to fight back, and I finally had the right person in my corner. We filed quietly, keeping things under wraps. We froze the joint accounts, anything that wasn't already gone. I couldn't risk her running off with anything else while I was still recovering. Sarah didn't waste any time. She kept digging, gathering every bit of evidence she could find. And then, she found something even bigger. Turns out, Lisa had used my name to open a credit card in my absence. Fraud. Just like that. She'd been running up charges, taking loans, buying things, hiding them under my name. I could feel the weight of that hit me like a hammer. When I mentioned the note Lisa had left, the one that started it all, Sarah smiled a little. "We'll include that too," she said. "It'll work in your favor. Trust me." It wasn't about revenge at that point, it was about winning. And with Sarah on my side, I knew we were going to make sure Lisa felt the consequences of everything she'd done. When I arranged to meet Lisa, I didn't know what to expect. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to let out all the anger I had been holding inside for weeks. But another part of me knew that I had to be calm and calculated. It was no longer about giving in to my emotions. It was about ending this once and for all. So I chose a restaurant. Not too fancy, not too cheap, something in between. It was early afternoon, and the restaurant was quiet. I wanted it to stay that way. No crowds, no distractions. Just her and me. She showed up right on time, walking in like she was still the queen of the world. High heels, fake tan that always looked too orange to me, and that look on her face that said she thought I was her husband, someone she could boss around. She looked around, noticed me, and approached with that smug smile I had grown accustomed to over the years. "Hello," she said, sitting down across from me, her voice as sweet as syrup. What a surprise. "What's going on?" I didn't say a word. I slid the folder across the table, which contained everything. Bank statements. Emails. Photos of her and Eric on the beach in Aruba, smiling as if nothing had happened. Her eyes slid over the folder, and she smirked contemptuously as she picked it up. "What's this?" she asked, opening the folder, her voice feigning curiosity. "The end," I said in an even but cold voice. She began flipping through the papers, and with each page her eyes grew more frightened. Wire transfers, credit card fraud, emails from Eric. Her smirk began to fade, replaced first by confusion, then panic. I could see it in her face, she hadn't expected this. She thought I was still some kind of fool who could be kept in the dark. You can't prove anything, she said, trying to maintain her composure, but her voice trembled. I already have, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. And your boyfriend's wife will get a copy of all this. I'm sure she'll love the photos. Her face went pale. She slammed the folder shut and jumped up from the couch. You don't understand what you're doing, she hissed. You can't do this to me. But it was too late. I wasn't listening anymore. She spun on her heels and ran out of the diner, slamming the door behind her. I remained seated, as calmly as possible. I paid the bill and left a large tip. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because it was the right thing to do. I wasn't going to lose my dignity over her. Never again. That was the last time I saw her. And I felt a strange sense of peace as I walked out of the diner. It was over. The courtroom was cold and sterile, like in the movies. I sat and waited for the judge to enter, feeling the weight of everything that was happening. I had never faced anything like this before, but there I was, looking at Lisa across the table, surrounded by lawyers and papers. I felt the tension building in my chest, but I didn't give in. Lisa, of course, was trying to play the victim. She put on her saddest expression and sat with her hands folded in front of her, as if she had been wronged. She claimed that I was cold, that I had given up on our marriage. It was the same story she had been feeding me for months. I didn't ask for this, she said, her voice trembling so much that she sounded sincere. Jack just stopped caring about me. He pushed me away. He was never there. I needed someone who cared about me. I felt my blood pressure rise, but Sarah, my lawyer, didn't flinch. She was calm and collected, as if she'd been through this 1,000 times. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't waste any time. She pulled out the evidence I had been gathering for weeks, time-stamped bank transfers, detailed transaction logs showing how Lisa had withdrawn nearly $40,000 from our accounts. She presented GPS data showing how Lisa had spent nights at Eric's house, even when she claimed to be working late. It was all laid out, and it wasn't pretty. But Sarah didn't stop there. She introduced a surprise witness, Eric's ex-wife. She was more than willing to talk, and she did. She told everything, explaining how Lisa had been texting Eric constantly, planning weekends away, and how she had also drained Eric's savings. The ex-wife even kept the bank statements. I saw Lisa's face change as the truth came out. She was no longer an innocent victim. The smirk on her face disappeared. She fidgeted in her chair, clenching her hands tightly on the table. The judge didn't believe her for a second. He didn't even blink as he listened to her testimony, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, I felt a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. Mr. Thompson, the judge said, looking straight at me, I award you the majority of the remaining assets. Mrs. Thompson is also required to return half of the funds she illegally withdrew from your joint account and pay your legal fees. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't just about the money, it was vindication. It wasn't about winning, it was about her paying for what she had done. And the cherry on top? The judge added that the credit card fraud was another factor. Lisa would be held responsible for that as well. But the best part? Lisa's world fell apart right after the verdict. It turned out that Eric had finally had enough. He left her. I think when he realized that she had cleaned out his savings, he realized what she was really like. It was like justice had been served, like the world was finally in balance. As I left the courtroom, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt relieved. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't fighting for something that wasn't worth it. And I knew one thing for sure, my life would finally be mine again. I sold the house. I didn't even think twice about it. The place where we spent all those years, memories, arguments, good times and bad. It had become a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, and it was time to let it go. The house was gone, and with it the life I thought I had built with Lisa. I bought a small house. It's hidden away in the mountains. It's the kind of place where you can forget about everything for a while. The air is fresh, the pine trees are tall, and the silence penetrates your soul. It's peaceful here. There are no ghosts. There are no reminders that everything fell apart. Mike still comes to visit every month. He's always been there for me, and even though I'm far from Denver now, it's nice to know he's only a phone call away. We go fishing, nothing fancy, just a couple of rods, a case of beer, and hours spent talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes I just listen to the sound of the water, the birds singing, the wind rustling through the trees. I started cooking again. Nothing fancy. Just dishes that made me feel like I was doing something right. It was a small comfort, but after everything that had happened, it felt like a victory. Now I smile. I really smile. It's not a forced smile or a mask. I'm happy. It took a lot of effort to get here, but I'm finally here. And then I met someone. Her name is Rachel. She's a teacher, someone who sees the world in a way I never could. She has a sarcastic streak as sharp as a nail, but underneath it all is a heart the size of Colorado. She's one of those people who says what she thinks, but also knows how to listen. She's different, and she knows everything about me. The mess, the broken heart, the recovery. I didn't try to hide anything from her. And, to my surprise, she didn't run away. She stayed. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture. There was no fairy tale moment. It was just real. She was there for the simple things, coffee in the morning, dinner at night, quiet moments. It's not perfect, but it's mine. It's real. It's funny how the worst day of your life can lead to something better. I think I'm living proof of that right now. Life goes on, and sometimes it gets better. All I had to do was let go of the past and make room for something new. And I think I've finally done that.